Hello and welcome to Us Democrats here on Access Nashua. My name is Dave Tencza, Chair of the Nashua Democratic City Committee. As always, here with me is Representative Ken Gidge from Ward 6. Representative, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing very, very well, and the next couple of weeks it's going to be very fascinating because you are going to get the candidate back from Ward 8.
Yes.
She must come back. So it's a fascinating thing that's taking place out there. As you probably know, we talked about it before the show. There was a front page of something that one of the candidates have said. Would you like to?
Sure. We can go right into that as we've talked about previously on the shows. A special election coming up in Ward 8 to fill a vacancy for a state representative.
Right.
The election's on November 5th, the same day as the municipal election, and it'll be Latha Mangiapudi, the Democrat in the race, against Peter Silva, who is a Republican who's been a former majority leader under Representative and Speaker O'Brien in the House when you were there last term. So obviously Latha is of Indian descent.
Yes, very much so.
But she's lived here in Nashua for a long time, raised her family here in Nashua, and been a very active member of the community.
Extremely active member of the community, yes.
On the Board of Education previously, she did a lot with Bicentennial Elementary School on the PTO when her children were there, and it's been involved in a number of other organizations throughout the city. So there was a article in the newspaper last Friday about a comment that Peter Silva made at a Republican City Committee meeting. One of the things that's interesting to me is this is the same City Committee meeting that there was some controversy around because it was billed as an aldermanic forum, but some of the aldermen didn't feel like they were invited to participate or didn't feel welcome participating in the forum.
Yeah, let's just, before we move on, let's talk about that.
Sure.
Because this supposedly was a Republicans'
It was a city committee meeting, yes.
And they invited probably Republicans who were running for city, Alderman at Large, and some of them weren't invited. And I think the lady we had on, Sheen, she sort of crashed it, went in there, and not crashed it, she just walked in.
Well, she actually didn't. She didn't go because I think from what's been reported, I don't think Diane felt that she was invited to go. She reached out the day of the event and wasn't able to get an answer. So,
okay, I apologize.
So she did not go. But that was a controversy that it was billed as.
That was one controversy.
That was one controversy.
That's right.
But there were the candidates for Alderman at Large. There were 5 of the 6 people running, not including Diane Sheehan. And then there were also, I know both candidates for Ward 3 were there. Paul Shea, who is not a registered Democrat or Republican, he's independent. And then the other candidate in Ward 3, who was David Schoeneman. So, there were candidates there for both sides. Frankly, the comments afterwards from the Republican City Committee, I think, show that Diane Sheehan wasn't welcome at the committee meeting that night. And so that was a bit of a controversy. I think both sides had their point of view. But that happened, and then there was this other controversy that came up in the state rep race because Peter Silva was there. Apparently he had a chance to speak at the podium and address the group that night. He talked about the primary election. He was out there on the night of the primary election holding a sign, promoting his own candidacy, even though he didn't have an opponent in the Republican primary. He made a comment to the group saying that he thought he was in New Delhi during the primary election because in his opinion, there had been so many Indian American voters who had come out. I guess he assumed that they were all supporting Latha in that primary that she had back in September.
He said that they would come out of the woodwork.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it is. You know, he's unapologetic about the comments that he made. Clearly, he feels he was trying to rally his base of support and saying that she was going to have good support from the Indian American community. I think, unfortunately, the way it sounds to a lot of people is just not very, not very sensitive. We'll say clearly, Latha is, has the Indian American community should be excited about Latha's candidacy
Yes,
for
absolutely.
a lot of reasons. Just like
Absolutely, like every other, from the Irish. I mean, it just went on. The French. I mean,
Right.
my father-in-law was discriminated as being, right out of Canada.
Right.
I know Irish. No Irish. In many places, no Irish need apply for
Right.
jobs. I mean, Italian Americans. Now we're running to, Spanish Americans and Indian Americans, and it wasn't too smart of him, and I think he should have known better. It's not that he meant anything wrong, but if you really don't mean anything wrong, at least you should be sensitive to how people feel and think. Do I think he said that he meant anything wrong? No, I don't.
No.
But if he's showing that he's not sensitive to this, that we really don't want him up in Concord, there's a lot of big issues taking place. He as a Republican, we need another Democrat up there. We need her up there.
And there were many other ways he could have phrased what he said. And I think that's what's unfortunate about him not coming forward to frankly say, well, I could have been smarter, I could have phrased it differently. He could have easily said, listen, it was clear that she had gotten her base out during the primary election. Latha had the best comment about this when her comment was, Ward 8 isn't turning into New Delhi, nor this is just 21st century America, and I think that's the point. Is that Ward 8 is a very inclusive ward. There are a lot of young families, people from all different backgrounds who live there, who work in the city, who work down in the Boston area or in the tech sector and Burlington in that area. People like myself, I'm from Ward 8. It's where my wife grew up and she was raised.
And part of it touches Ward 6 where I'm at.
Right, very close.
So I know, of course, Ward 8 is a great part of the city. Right. But there's two things I'd like to follow up on. First of all, the Republican Party not inviting everyone to this event, that's really not how the politics in the city are usually done when it comes to city business. They don't run by party.
Right.
They just run. And if you've got a friend of yours who happens to be a Republican or a Democrat, fine.
Right.
But to start using this party thing, we got away from that. Nashua got away from that a long time ago. And it's really clear. You don't run by party. You run by who you are. That's number one. But the part that I find a little disturbing also, it made the front page of the Telegraph. How did it get to the front page? 2 weeks ago, there was something about her in the Telegraph having people stay at her house during the campaign for Obama, and they voted here.
Right.
And it says, hey, guess what? It's legal.
Right.
Now, why would that be brought up? If that's something legal, why would that be brought up?
Well, that's it's one of those stories that keeps coming up. That's brought up the kind of the right wing blog sphere, I guess they call it, investigates these kinds of things. So they'll go and they'll see who's registered to vote at certain certain households. My opinion, like always, the newspaper has the ability to run something, to not run something. It's their choice. It's really a non-issue because the Attorney General has looked many similar cases like this, and has determined that this, under New Hampshire law, it's not any type of voter fraud. It's, when I was a college
Not at all.
student,
Not
right?
at
It's
all.
not at all.
Not at all.
Not even in question. This
Yeah.
is something, and I don't know, but I would assume that since it's legal, all of the Republican staffers who come here to work on presidential elections do the exact same thing.
Matter of fact, when I do a show with Bill O'Brien, the former Speaker of the House, and we had Pete Silver on. And one of the individuals who talked to me before the show said, hey, ask Pete Silver why a lot of Romney people voted in the state of New Hampshire.
Right.
And it's like college kids.
Right.
Where is their domicile at that particular point? Well, they're at UNH.
Right.
So they're voting there. Not absentee ballot, but
Sure.
showing their license, and this is where we are. We're here. So they want to come around and say, let us set something up whereby if you're not a resident, and meaning a resident means you have to have something registered, your automobile or something in the city or the town that you're going to vote in. If you don't, then you can't vote.
Right.
Now, that eliminates a lot of college kids who are didn't get, or they didn't have absentee ballots sent to them, or get them. And sometimes they can send them to you. Sometimes you can't go in and get them to give them to somebody else.
Sure.
So, because
Right.
you don't put your name on the ballot.
Right.
So how silly. Voter fraud, they're saying. But what they were trying to do is eliminate people. They got really
Sure.
lost the election. So they're trying to eliminate the college kids from voting.
Sure.
The people who don't have, there's a lot of elderly people who really don't have driver's licenses, and they don't have birth certificates.
Right.
Then what do you do? There are states with populations like that. Then what do you do?
And that's the effect, and that's what Democrats have been arguing against these voter identification laws that have been coming up, not just here in New Hampshire, but all across the country.
Oh, yes.
It's a troubling trend because we should be more inclusive when it comes to voting rights. The country as a whole, New Hampshire especially, should encourage people to vote. We don't have a problem with too much participation in elections.
Correct.
Especially, coming up in these municipal elections in November, or even next year in the midterm elections, or the presidential elections for that matter, every 4 years. Because although more people do come out for presidential elections,
they always do.
They always do.
They always do.
It's still, it's not 100% participation.
No, never even close.
Right.
Never 90% or 95.
No.
I mean, that just doesn't happen.
No.
Why? We don't know.
Right.
It's not. I couldn't look at a camera and say, well, they don't care about America. Yeah, people do. Many times there are reasons why people do not vote. But I think this last time around, and I was up in Concord when these voter laws were trying to be put in. And so we go to the Secretary of State and we say, how many people have fraudulently voted and were prosecuted? And he said something like in millions, or like 2 or 3 people.
Right.
Millions,
right.
2 or 3 people over 10 years. Right. And then why are you doing this? Well, move to other states. All of a sudden, New Hampshire is just a small little part of this puzzle, because it is, like you said, going right across the country.
Right.
They want to stop people from voting who have less advantage than a lot of people, and they believe that certain people of color, people will vote for Democrats, and we're finding that that's not factual.
Sure.
So to start doing something like this when there's so few people who come in and try to, take an election, steal an election, or vote vote when they're not supposed to. It's so few that you have to ask, why are they doing this?
Sure. Oh, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned earlier that there are seniors. The voter ID laws clearly adversely affect seniors because they don't have identification. If they're not driving, they're not renewing their license. They'd have to go to the DMV and get these non-driving voter IDs. If they don't have a birth certificate, they are going to have even more trouble. So seniors who are generally looked at as being more conservative are one of the groups that are adversely affected by these restrictive voting laws. And when you look at the groups pushing, the big business groups pushing these laws, or groups like ALEC or big conservative national groups, one of the other things that they want to do is they want to do a lot of entitlement reforms. They want to scale back things like Medicaid, Social Security.
$45 billion taking away from food stamps.
Right.
What is that all about?
But even these programs that everyone loves.
Yeah.
That seniors rely upon.
Rely, literally.
Right. My grandmother lived off of Social Security. I mean, she retired when she was 60 something, probably even a little earlier. Lived off of her Social Security. She relied on it when my dad was in school and this and that. And if she didn't have that, she wouldn't have been able to do things like stay in her home and afford the small things that she could. So it's a concerted effort on a lot of fronts. These voter ID bills. It's troubling, and it's not something we need here. In New Hampshire.
We just don't happen to need it in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. New Hampshire, I've said this before, a liberal in New Hampshire is a moderate conservative everywhere else in the United States, simply because we're so cheap up here. You don't have to say I'm a conservative when it comes to money. Of course I am. Right. We only make $100 a year to do the job. Do you think we're going to let anybody get anything? Right. That we're not going to, Yeah. We want everyone to get what they deserve. But up in here in New Hampshire, it's really tight-run state, even with us being the fourth or third largest governing body in the English-speaking world, and people still don't understand that. I tell them that, It is one thing that Peter Silva did say in this interview is that if he got elected, he would definitely make sure that the word domicile would have a meaning, and he would really, get right down to straightening this whole thing out. And I'm thinking, there's nothing to straighten out. Right. You had your chance. You had this supermajority here in New Hampshire. You lost. Mm-hmm. From a supermajority to a minority. 297 to 103. That's a supermajority. Right. I was one of the 103. Peter, why don't you just, sit down and relax and let a good Democrat go to Concord? I can see Peter if he's watching. He'll be watching this. He will comment on it.
Yeah. I mean, well, and clearly with all the other issues facing the state right now, voter ID should not be the biggest issue.
No, it shouldn't be, or it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the Indian people are going to come out of the woodwork, right. So you better vote for me. Right. Just a little history. As I've said, no Irish need apply. I mean, those are very famous signs. Mm-hmm. Right. From black individuals, from Spanish to Italian. It's just the way it is. Right. And it's just the way it has been. Right. So he should have been more sensitive to that. Yeah,
he should have been. And it was, another troubling part of the whole story is that your co-host on one of the other shows you do on this station sought to capitalize on his response and his comments by sending out an email to other like-minded Republicans asking them to donate to his campaign because it was going to be difficult He even pledged, I think Bill O'Brien pledged $500 to Peter Silva's campaign, to kind of kickstart the effort to get it going. So, it's clearly not something that Peter Silva or Bill O'Brien can see as being troubling, or they clearly can't understand how people would take this the wrong way. But frankly, we've seen Bill O'Brien in his comments. He hasn't apologized for anything he said regarding the Fugitive Slave Act and the Affordable Care Act. So this is nothing new, I guess, is my point.
Yes, and I do a show with him, and let me tell you, the fur flies. Bill O'Brien and myself. I understand a lot of the reasons what happened, but he's consistently the Peter Silva type. But don't misunderstand me. I don't think that that O'Brien would make a comment like that. I just think that was a silly comment, and it was. I don't know how it was said, but Bill O'Brien did say something. Bill O'Brien, this is important about this campaign. Yes, this is the first I heard that he donated $500. He can certainly donate more than that if he wants to. And the Republicans have to win this because they've lost so much. So this is just not an election that you should look at, an Indian election or a Pete Silver election. No, that has nothing to do with this. This has an election to do, when you send the people up there, you vote for them or not, they have to. They have to be of service to you. Now, who is going to be better serving you? Somebody who's been up there, we already see the record, or we're taking a look at the lady's record from being involved in the community, the school board, the PTL, the kids, the schools. We need something strong like that. She just happens to be a very, very intelligent woman. We had her on.
We did.
And we both know that you can't get much by her.
No.
And it would be kind of interesting to see them both sit down and talk with one another. That would be a nice, but I don't think she would do it. I know Pete would. I know Pete Silva would, but I don't know. I don't know either. And I don't know at this point. I don't know how she's feeling about the comments that were being said, or if it's worth it for her to sit down with him. I don't want to say that. I don't want to speak for Latha. She can decide that. But she's very welcome to be on this show, obviously.
Oh, obviously, very welcome. I think
she should be right up to the end of the campaign.
I think you hit on it. She's the best person to represent Ward 8 in Concord. A lot of issues coming up this year and next year. There's going to be Medicaid expansion. You guys are going to have to figure out how to spend the surplus in the budget.
A surplus. The Republicans were, never mind.
Right, which they want to take credit for now. They're claiming that it was all because of them. I don't think they necessarily see that a lot of people suffered the last 2 years, probably unnecessarily, in order to get that. That
now
surplus.
We're coming up to Medicaid, which we sat down and figured it out, and I did bring it to Mr. O'Brien's, in front of Mr. O'Brien. I had the facts and figures. It's approximately, for 3 years, $800,000 a day. A day that would come into the state. Think about it. I'm sorry, I got to get this. I'm trying to think, it's got to be a week and say, no, a day coming into this state. Now, that helps.
Can you explain how would that money be coming in to the state?
Well, it's coming in from the federal government. The Obama administration and the government will pay for 3 years, full 3 years. And after that, we in the state of New Hampshire must pay no more than 10%. But a lot of these people will also have disabilities, et cetera, so the state won't pay that much. But now, Medicaid paid by the federal government right now is 50%. We only get 50%.
Right.
So to say we're going to get it at 90%, 100%, excuse me, and in 3 years, 90%, I mean, this is a good deal.
That's a great deal.
And look at the people who can, the work. I mean, people are going to get well, but that puts a lot of people to work.
Right. And that would be work in hospitals, clinics, essentially in the medical field. Good jobs for people. Clearly, 2 hospitals here in Nashua.
Wonderful jobs. And not only that is, look, if you have insurance and you're sick and you're feeling better, you will contribute.
Yeah.
You will go out. You will purchase. You
Right.
will maybe go out to eat or go to a movie. You will contribute, buy gas here in the state of New Hampshire, maybe drive up north. You will contribute something.
Sure.
But if you're not well and you're not sick, then you're not contributing. And that hurts everybody. So to get everyone feeling good about themselves or feeling physically good, in some case mentally well or better, and that's something we should talk about, the mental health of the state of New Hampshire across the United States.
Sure.
So to lose all that money, and they're saying the reason why they don't want to take Medicaid is they do not trust Obama to keep his word. Now let me see if I have this straight. When they say that, are they saying every single Republican who is a senator and a congressperson of one party, let's say Democrat, can't be trusted? And every single Republican believes that they're not going to get the money? It's sad. It's a sad, sad state of affairs.
Well, it is, especially since if my math is correct, in 3 to 4 years, Obama's not going to be in office. So whoever the Senate is at that time, whoever the Congress is, whoever the president can, they're going to be the ones responsible for adjusting how much the federal government pays out, not President Obama. So
well, that's true, but that's absolutely true. But here in New Hampshire, we've gone over, the numbers are high as 58,000. 61% of them are women. Republicans are having trouble with women, and I brought this everywhere I go. Why do you do this? Why, if you're having a problem with a woman voter, why in the world are you saying that you don't want 61% of the 58,000 people cared for? Sure. I don't understand when people say stuff like that. And if people are sick and they end up going bankrupt because of it, or homeless because of it, and that happens. Or lose everything that they've worked for because they need a little bit at the beginning to cure something or to help them help themselves. It's awful situation.
It is, and I keep going back to the fact that a lot of these people who will be helped on by the Medicaid expansion are working people who are making minimum wage, who are trying to support a family. So maybe their kids are covered under Medicaid already, but once they turn, once you're an adult, Medicaid isn't as generous as it is when you're a child. So if 2 people working minimum wage jobs, making, less than was 118% of the federal poverty level, whatever for a family of 4, it's around $28,000 a year.
You can't live on $28,000.
Especially if you get sick and you get one hospital bill for $10,000. That's a big.
And I think it's good to talk about this for several reasons. One reason is, how could one party, called the Republicans, be so ignorant to the fact that this is going to help lots of people, Republicans and Democrats? Now, I don't believe Republicans themselves, the voter, and also the individual who's been voted into office, I can't believe that the people who have been voted into office, the Republicans, believe that this should not take place here in the state of New Hampshire. I don't believe the people out there listening to Republican, Democrat, Conservative, Liberal, I don't believe that they think that that's bad to have Medicare. That's wrong. But we've got to this pitch and to this point of almost ignorance on both sides sometimes. It just happens this time it's Republicans, but the Democrats have certainly we can raise our hands for doing things. But to say that 58,000 people could be, for 3 years, freely paid for their health, and not to take that money, $800,000 extra. It's awful.
Don't you think it's mostly ideological, that their ideology of small government is more important to them than the effects?
Why is it every time a Republican says small government, Reagan is their main man? I mean, Reagan, they're gonna, if they could,
Sure.
they would put him on the side of a mountain in his face. He wanted small government. He ended up with big government.
Right.
When he came in, there was a little deficit. There was a big deficit. So guess what? So you loved him because he wanted small government, but he ended up with big government. Okay. Republican comes in, same thing. Democrat comes in, Clinton, what do we do? Balance the budget.
Right.
I mean, how can you keep saying this and not do it?
Well, I think that's probably a lot of where the backlash has come from in today's Republican Party, is that you had George W. Bush, who was a good conservative Republican who passed a Medicare program that expanded prescription drug coverage.
Prescription drugs,
which we all like. Which Democrats like and seniors
thank you, Mr. Bush. That was very nice. This was good for a lot of people.
It was, and he worked with Senator Kennedy on that. A lot of Democrats to get that done. He worked with Senator Ted Kennedy on education reform and No Child Left Behind, which are
and that is a non-paid-for mandate.
Right. Oh, right, and that's
when they say they want to get rid of the mandates, No Child Left Behind. That's good. You throw it to the states, and now where's the money going to come from? At least to get it started. Nothing.
Right.
So that if the program doesn't work, and it hasn't worked good, who do you blame?
Right. Yeah. Who do you blame? That's what people are wondering these days.
I like that. One other thing is since we're on what took place. The government was shut down by the Republicans. This is fact. This is true. That's not That's not, made up. It was shut down by the Republicans on the very day Obamacare starts. Now, if anyone thinks that that's a coincidence, then you really need Medicaid and some assistance. Because the fact is, that's what they did for Obamacare. That's how they planned this. $24 billion were lost. $24 billion. Approximately $400 million could have gone to each state separately. $400 million. It certainly would have paid for Medicaid, and it would for a year or a year, a little bit more. It certainly would have paid for Obamacare, most of it, or 90% of it. Instead, where did the money go? We lost it.
Right.
And then the Republicans, we did talk about the World War II individuals. They shut down the government, and of course they shut down the parks. I mean, that's money. You need to, safety, etc. And the World War II veterans come up. And now they're mad at the Republicans are turning around and say, well, the Democrats won't vote to put the money. And we're going, wait a minute. Why'd you close the government down?
Well, I think, those are political stunts that I think a lot of people saw right through. I would hope a lot of people saw right through. And clearly if they knew, they're shutting the government down, presumably they would have known that these parks and museums and everything else were also, were going to be shut down as a result of their actions.
Well, let me just say something. Pete Silver said something very silly. He shouldn't have. The Republicans in Washington did something very silly without thinking. And I hate to say that is sort of like their mindset, is they really don't think about the ramifications. 58,000 people in Medicaid, paid for 3 years. 61% of them are women. What are they thinking about? Where is this? Where is their thoughts on this? Aren't you thinking not only that it's just women, but a lot of people?
Well, don't you think so much of it has to do with the primary process? So many Republicans today are now worried about having, being in a primary for someone who's more conservative than they are. Isn't that the issue?
And if I hear the Tea Party one more time, look, the Tea Party started off with Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, everybody who's just really upset with the government, period. How did it turn into, the Tea Party, turn into a tentacle of the Republican Party? How? And the people who, especially the Democrats or even some, Republicans out there, are going like, how did this happen?
Right.
Where are we now? Where can we go? What can we say? Do we have to start another one that's open for everyone?
Isn't it, it was interesting. I heard something in the news last week when they were talking about the shutdown and everything that John Boehner had to deal with in Washington during the shutdown and the elections that made me think of, Concord 2 years ago or last year. And, they described John Boehner and trying to collect the votes to end the shutdown as being like herding cats, which is always how they described Bill O'Brien trying to herd
herding cats. Yes, right. He has said that.
He had said that.
He has said that.
So I don't think this is something new. I think it's moving from place to place. The Tea Party tactics that they're using
to get rid of a person who's been a conservative, to put somebody in who would close down the government. And the individual, you probably know him, he's a representative from Texas. He's a first-termer, and he's made quite a name for himself, and he's closed the government down. It cost all of us $24 billion, and he goes back to his people, and they're applauding him.
Right.
Cruz. They're all applauding this senator.
Sure.
Wow. Boy, did he do a good job. And I'm thinking to myself, if that's what you want,
right,
this is what's going to happen. And I just cannot believe that they tapped him on the back and said, thank you very much.
Well, you speak with a lot of the elected officials, Republican officials in Concord, a lot more than I do. You wonder if there's a disconnect between the elected Republican officials and just more rank and file, the voters of the Republican Party. Again, the primary process is difficult. Clearly, in the presidential primaries, you see Republicans catering to certain groups.
Certain groups, correct.
There's a Tea Party group. There's a conservative evangelical groups that they have to appease. Which I don't think we necessarily see that too much here in New Hampshire, but certainly nationally we do. But even here in New Hampshire, Gary Lambert, who is running for Congress against Ann Custer, who is from Nashua, would represent Nashua, he came out very early on and said he would be for the shutdown. I think it's clear he's worried about a Tea Party person coming in and kind of running to the right of where he's positioned himself. So he's willing to go along with these kind of tactics.
Well, I think he should come on U.S. Democrats this show and let's talk. Let's go after what he is saying. How does he feel now?
Sure.
Because by coming on and talking to us, guess what? There may be some good qualities of this guy, but he wanted to shut the country down, and it did cost you $24 billion. Now, we know that.
Right.
He made the comment before. He went along with it. We lost 24. That's $400 million a state per state. It would have all got $400 million, and that's who you want in or Concord and/or our federal government. The answer is no. You don't. Right. You don't. We don't want that. And I think what you said is the disconnect part up here in New Hampshire. How can we have a majority House which passes and goes into 24 senators? How can several Republican senators here in the state of New Hampshire say, no, we don't want Medicaid? How can they say that and it doesn't take place?
Well, they haven't said that yet, right?
Well,
There's been no vote.
they've backed us up. They've backed us up, and into that they pushed it. Then the Senate president pushed it over, and so then they had to go back. And all summer long they've been talking about, should we accept it, should we not accept it? And Bragdon's was going to be on that committee, but since he's taken a job at $181,000 a year on another thing that we can talk about,
Sure.
all right, but he puts on his own person. I was there for the very first meeting of that, and you should have heard this lady. It was like, no matter what was said about Medicaid, they didn't want it.
Right.
They didn't want it. So
Again, it's ideology. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the ideology of not expanding government, of keeping cost contained and the government out of people's decisions, supposedly. I'm not saying I don't think that's what Medicaid does, but they're putting their ideology ahead of what's best for people in the state.
that is true. And it does happen up in Concord, right here in this state. And so, this November we have somebody we definitely have to send up there.
Right.
We do not want even close votes on anything. We have the majority, the Democrats have a majority, and we didn't get the majority taken away from an absolute supermajority. An absolute supermajority. How could they lose so many?
Sure.
And the reason is the ideology is definitely, definitely the thing. They want people, and Republicans voted for Democrats, and I'm sure some Democrats voted for Republicans. That's just the way it is. But the ideology has to stop. You can't have a guy like Ted Cruz and in our state capital running down, stopping the government, and then he goes home and they tap him on the back and they say good.
Right, and he goes around the country and he raises lots of money.
Oh, tons of money.
And people show up for these.
Is that
events.
what you want? Is that what
Right.
people want? I mean, you can't stop them from doing it,
Right.
and we can't stop people from going and contributing, but I think the word, and you said, is ideology. We have to start looking at that. That's above, in a sense, Democrat and Republican.
Right.
It's above both of us. And what is the ideology? Is it for one particular group, or is it for the people that you're voted to care for?
Sure. Hey, and I have to say, I think we've had excellent Democratic leadership here in New Hampshire. Big D Democratic, to the point where, as a party, I mean, we have our beliefs, and there are some things that we've been very successful in attaining over the last, 10 years. But people like Senator Shaheen, Governor Lynch, now Governor Hassan, they're not ideologically driven. They want what's best for the state. They want to work with the legislature to find common sense solutions to the problems. And we haven't solved them all yet. We probably never will. But at least they're working with Republican legislators to make it better.
The wisdom of the state of New Hampshire's voters this time around was, for governor, either you're going to get the very same that you've got in the House of Representatives as a governor, or you're going to get somebody like the beloved Lynch, who probably could have ran again and won.
Right.
You're either going to get somebody like him, who happens to be Maggie Hassan, which I was on a committee with, and I got news for you. One tough person.
Sure.
One fair person. And both Republicans and Democrats went after her. Or it was a committee member, head of a committee. This always happens anyway.
Sure.
How somebody handles it is how they're. And so we are lucky. We're very, very lucky.
Right. Yeah, it's been steady leadership, and it's really. I think New Hampshire Democrats have done well, starting with starting under Senator Shaheen, and then even to this day with the governor.
Well, we're kept telling, and if Richard's out there, we're always told we're going to get Skype, because when we get Skype, then we can talk to Jean Shaheen.
That'd be fantastic.
You can't. It's hard to get her to come in. I mean,
Sure.
It's so busy. They really are busy people.
They are.
But to sit down and Skype and to do 5 or 10 minutes with us would be really good. And I'm sure pretty soon, this show will get it, our show will get it. It's a tough thing to put on, but it's quite interesting.
It is.
Of this technology.
It's great too, because you can, it makes the world so much smaller. You can talk to people, anywhere in the country. They can be sitting at their desk back home or in Washington and have a pretty, good conversation with them.
My son is in China, 12-hour difference. So if we call him at 11 o'clock in the morning, it's 11 o'clock at night. Through Skype, we can watch it. And that the technology that is taking place and how it's going to, what is it going to do to politics? I don't think it's quite out yet. I think the Republicans said the reason why Obama won is that he was using an iPad and we were using, a pen and pencil. That's a pretty good way of putting it. But what is technology going to? What is next? How is it going to affect us? I hope it's nothing more to do with emails, because I could do with a few.
No, it's so much more than emails. A lot of what do they call it? Micro-targeting, where they know exactly, based on your previous voting history, based on everything they can get off your Facebook page and Gmail accounts. They know which way you're leaning politically and what they need to. They need to tell you.
And we've got a couple bills coming up in Concord. One is we're going to be talking about it this week, and that will be it's a chip that can be put in certain products that you buy. Go into a store and they can put a chip in your bag. You wouldn't know it, and it's so inexpensive today. I mean, and so if you're all the time that you're walking around the store, and they obviously have your credit card if you use a credit card, and people are wondering, well, wait a minute, outside the store, could they have a chip at the corner? Could they have it in restaurants? Could they do that? Now, we have cell phones, so we're on GPS. We can take the batteries out, and we're not on GPS, okay? But how much freedom do you want to give up?
That's the question. How much privacy are you willing to hand over to these big companies?
I have one other thing I would really like to talk about that we'll be talking about tomorrow. I just can't believe this. I had a call from a dentist. A lot of dentists are giving me a call and say, look, there's a bill we want you to vote for or against, depending on. Well, what it does is the insurance company has said, look, we would like you to come into our plan. In other words, we will, if they come to you with our insurance, we'll be very happy to pay this much for, let's say, a cavity, this much for maybe cleaning teeth. That's all. Sure. If you want to get in with us, you sign, and this is what you're going to get for a cavity. That's what we're going to pay you. Well, what the insurance companies are telling the dentist is that there is a procedure that we don't pay for. The insurance companies does not pay for this procedure. But if you want to get on our plan, you have to charge this amount of money for this procedure that we don't pay for. In other words, they're forcing these dentists on how they price. They're telling them, forcing them to charge what they want them to charge, but they're not. The insurance companies will pay nothing. If that's, and of course, the old thing is well, the dentists don't have to sign on to it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, up here in New Hampshire, it's a monopoly. So that's something we'll be talking about tomorrow. It's a monopoly. What insurance companies are up here?
Is it just Northeast Delta Dental?
Yeah, well, not this. I think one or two more, but the Anthem does that, and they're the major, the big players for all and basically all insurance. But why should we let insurance companies? I mean, that's the difference between a Republican and a Democrat. I think I don't agree. If it's a monopoly, if there are 25 or 30 of these things, and you don't want to sign on because they're not doing this, and you can go to two more insurance, fine.
Right.
But when there's really only one big player, that's a monopoly, and we have to do something.
Sure. So is the bill to change that, or is it to allow insurance companies to set those prices?
Insurance companies are doing it now. We're trying to pass a bill where they cannot do it.
Oh, okay.
And the interesting part of that, the Republicans in our committee don't want it passed. And I can't figure out why they don't want it passed.
Shouldn't they want more competition, free market?
Well, that's right. We want, the only way you're going to do this is you're going to invite more in, and you're going to break up the monopoly.
Right.
And I think this is a very good bill. I think people should watch this. A lot of good, interesting things taking place up in Concord.
And what bill number is that? What committee is it in?
Oh my God, I think it's 530 or 560. I'm sorry. I mean, people have to understand that numbers and bills are all over the place. I got 180 tomorrow, which is an important one. I've got 3 coming out myself, which just have numbered now. But when they finally are, we come up with an idea for a bill, or somebody asks us. A regular citizen can't file a bill; they must come to us. And we file the bills for them, and we go in initially, and they give us a number, and they sort of start working on our bill, and by November 15th, it all has to be done the way we want it, and then they publish them. So and there's a lot of work going on up in Concord, and we're not getting paid for this. By the way,
you only get paid during the session.
No. Well, if you go up to file a bill, there is, I think, the 2 days they will not pay you, no matter what. And I mean, just mileage. We're not talking about anything else.
Sure.
I mean, you are doing, the people's business.
So there is a lot going on in Concord. Now, the bills that have to be filed, in case there's anyone out here who's thinking about asking someone to file a bill, this is for next year. This is for 2014.
No, this is for this term coming.
Okay.
Well, when you say next year, correct.
Next calendar year.
Next calendar year, 2014, correct.
So the bills that you filed earlier this year or late last year that are still in committee, do you need to refile those bills?
No, the ones that are in committees now are the ones that have been held over, laid on the table, and they're bringing them back. And tomorrow, we have to what is called an exec session.
Sure.
That means that they've been through our committees, they come before the whole member of the committees, and we vote, do we send it to the House floor? How do we send it to the House floor? So it's very fascinating how the process works. And then
it's very deliberate.
Yeah, then it goes to the House. If it passes the House, it goes to the Senate. If it passes the Senate, if it passes the Senate, it goes to the governor. And if one of them don't like it, they start all over again.
Yeah, it's a tough process. It's not intended for, the legislature to create a whole bunch of new laws every year. I mean, you really have to get everybody on board in order to
That's
affect
the
major
politics
change.
of it. I don't think people understand. You have to get along. If you send people up there who don't get along, you're not going to get anything done. You have to have the Republicans and Democrats working together.
Sure.
Ideology, you've got to put it aside, and when you don't do that, you get nothing done.
Right. Well, right, which we've seen, especially down in Washington these last couple of years. It's been a little bit better in Concord this year. You've got some things done. You pass a good bipartisan budget between the House and the Senate, and the governor. We're all happy with. They got what at least you felt you could get out of it, right?
Yeah.
So that was good.
It's no one's happy completely.
Right.
But we're going to try to get our candidate from Ward 8 in here.
We do.
Excellent. Yeah, she's
I'm
got
sure she'd be happy to come back on. We got a couple more weeks, not too much time before left before the election. Feels like a long time, but today, as we're taping, it's almost the end of October. So we'll get her in here, and if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask her, you can always reach out to me. My email, but through email. My name it's dave.tencza@gmail.com, and my last name is Tencza. It's a little different. If you want more information about the Nashua Democrats, you can always go to our website, www.nashuademocrats.com. Get more information about our local elected officials, what's going on with the Nashua Democratic City Committee, or you can look us up. We have a group page on Facebook, which is, if you Google Nashua Democrats Facebook, you'll find it. But we're coming up on our time for the week here. Representative, thank you again for being on. And this has been Us Democrats here on Access Nashua. Thank you.